Hi everybody, my name is Jeremy Siskind. I am not Tony Winston. Tony is gallivanting around Europe and was kind enough to invite me to be a guest on his channel. I have my own YouTube channel and I'm an author. I have books like Playing Solo Jazz Piano, Jazz Piano Fundamentals. There's actually 3 levels of this series, but this one's for months 1 through 6 of jazz piano studies. And I wrote a book called Solo Standards for Piano, which is 8 elegant arrangements of jazz piano standards. So Tony invited me to talk about anything that I wanted that might be useful to his audience. And I thought I would talk about one reason that I see a lot of jazz piano students getting stuck with their improvisations. I think we can all relate to this, right? What is more relatable than getting stuck as an improviser and playing the same things over and over? And you know, it's occurring to me right now as I talk that you guys might have no idea whether I can play piano or not. So let's just start with a little bit of improvisation and let's do this over a blues, because maybe that's something we'll talk about later. So if I'm playing an F blues, let's fix the camera angle here. I gotta be more professional on Tony's channel than I am on my own. Enough self-indulging. Let's talk about you and reasons why you might be stuck. And I want to focus today on hand position. Okay? Because we think so much about notes. What scale do I use? What's fancy chord substitution? I don't know. What are the modes? All of that. But I'm a big believer that good improviser can improvise really well staying within one mode or one scale. Right? You know, if you listen to Kind of Blue, So What? The musicians prove that you can improvise really well just staying within a mode. They stay within D Dorian on So What? You know, for 16 measures. Play all white keys. This is just my improvisation, not from the record. Go up to E flat Dorian, of course, if you're playing So What. Then back to D Dorian. Okay, so what about hand position? So, all right. Good improvisers, I believe, can stay within one mode or scale and keep it really interesting for a really long time without necessarily changing modes and scales. So what about hand position can help you do this? Well, so many students that I see do what I call the crab. Okay, and what's the crab? The crab is basically staying in what we call a 5-finger position, more or less, right? A 5-finger position, if you're a piano teacher, you've probably heard about this. Basically means that if you can see my hand, I'm gonna be on 5 adjacent notes of the major scale. And often, you know, if you're more beginning, 5 white keys. And the crab is named because we might scuttle like a crab to the left or to the right. But that shape is essentially never going to change. Right? And this is going to lead to some really boring sounding improvisations, with all due respect. So if I'm trying to play that same F blues that I played at the beginning and keep in that 5-finger, you know, crabby position, playing all right notes, I'm playing fine rhythms, but it's just a very kind of boring, basic sounding melody. So let's think about what other things our hands can do that are not craps. So the first thing that I would suggest to you guys is arpeggio position. Arpeggio position, as they say in the old country. Wow, accent work is not my strength. And what this means is that we're going to keep our hand in a position so that it can play a seventh chord. So for instance, if I'm in the key of C, instead of starting in my 5-finger position and maybe letting the thumb jut out a little bit, but basically moving back and forth, I'm gonna be outlining with my hand, C major 7. And you can see I'm doing this without my 4th finger. My 4th finger is just hanging out. So it's my 1, 2, 3, 5. And already this is going to really make a big difference. Right, versus, watch again with a closed hand position, I'm gonna really try to play well. Opening up the hand. The whole world opens up to me when we open up that hand. Let me get a better angle here. All right, so opening up to arpeggio position is the first thing to do. And by the way, if you want to practice this, what I would practice is playing seventh chords within your scale. Of course, pretty easy in C, but then go to D flat. What am I doing here? I'm starting on the 7th, and I'm taking every other note of the scale until I get a 7th chord. And then I'm going down, I'm starting on the 6th. I'm taking every other note of the scale until I get a 7th chord. Then the 5th, then the 4th. And these are what we would call our diatonic 7th chords. Diatonic means staying within the key. And the 7th chords are chords within the key. Some of them are going to be, oops, you can't see what I'm writing. Some of them are going to be major 7th chords. Some are going to be minor 7th chords. And I think just one. Some are going to be dominant 7th chords, and you'll even get a half diminished 7th chord. Just based on, we're keeping the same key signature for all these 7th chords and not going outside of the key. You can also practice your diatonic triads. Back to C major. This isn't going to spread your hand out quite as much, but it is good practice. All right, so arpeggio position is definitely one thing to keep your eye on. Nope, that's not the camera angle I wanted. See, come over to my channel and you can see all of this blundering firsthand. Okay, so then the second thing that we can and should do is cross over and cross under, right? Just like we do when we play a scale, so many students do not do this when they're improvising, and it means that their improvisations often sound somewhat stuck. One way to test yourself is to form a goal, okay? So here's my goal. I'm going to bring a melody from here to here using the notes of the C major scale. Okay, how am I going to do it, right? If I'm just doing the crab, it's going to take me forever. If I'm crossing over and under, I can get there really fast. And notice I'm actually combining these two things. I'm combining arpeggio position. There's my arpeggio. And I'm combining arpeggio position with crossing under. And same thing going the other way. I can get there really fast. Using crossing over. Now, as jazz pianists, maybe just as pianists, but a lot of the time I'm playing with my thumb under the hand rather than over to the left of the hand, right? Let's zoom in here. Here's a very common jazz lick that I teach all my students. So look at how I'm starting with the thumb not to the left of the second finger, but prepared often to the right of that second finger. Or here's another common jazz lick. The thumb is hanging out under the hand for the second part of that. Okay, if I'm trying to play all this stuff without crossing over, I'm just gonna be running out of fingers a lot of the time. Watch my thumb. Sometimes it's to the right of the fingers, but often it's tucked under the hand. Okay. So one exercise that I suggest, so I want you to practice those goals. You know, can you improvise a phrase that's 3 octaves from top to bottom? And then practice, start your phrase with the thumb tucked under. And it might be that you start your phrase with 2-1 or 3-2-1. And I have my students practice what we call drone improvisations. Drone improvisation means it's not in time, we're not changing chords. I'm just gonna play a nice low C and G. And then, can you see I started with 2-3-1? That's what I meant to say when I said 3-2-1. I meant 2-3-1. And it's just gonna allow your melodies to cover so much more ground. Wider melodies means more expressive and more varied melodies. Now, this video is already going on too long probably. Hopefully nobody will yell at me about it. But let's cover one more thing that your hand can do, which is that it can expand and contract. And this is important because this is how we're going to get larger leaps within your melody. And leaps are inherently expressive, right? When I say a leap, I'm usually referring to an interval bigger than a fifth. It's much more common and interesting to leap up rather than to leap down. Think of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Right? And there's an old rule in counterpoint. Counterpoint is an old art of thinking about how to write and combine melodies, which says that after a leap, you want to proceed by step in the opposite direction. So Somewhere Over the Rainbow totally does this. Big leap, and then steps in the other direction. Why do I bring that up? Well, it's to say that expand and contract are inherently interrelated. You have to expand your hand to get to the leap, and then you have to contract it to step in the other direction, right? Here's another example, Chopin. What happens next? Step in the other direction, right? Leap up, step down. There's a little ornament, but then it steps down. So as you're practicing this drone improvisation, practice expanding and then contracting to that new area, right? I was around here. If I were doing my crab, I have my fingers here, but now I'm expanding, contracting to the new area. I could do this going down as well. And I like have my students form what I call mountain range phrases. It's like you go to a peak, it comes back down. You go to a slightly higher peak, it comes back down. You go to a slightly higher peak. And then your mountain range can come down. Now we're creating some more dynamic, interesting phrases. Of course, there's still a lot of work to do, putting it in chords and rhythm and motivic development and all of that stuff. But I would recommend in these simple kind of drone atmospheres that you figure out, okay, what are the different ways I want my hand to move? Because if you can't do it in the simple places, you're not going to be able to do it super well in the other spots. So I think I better call my video there. That's already 16 minutes of blathering. If this was a really good level for you, if this was interesting, check out Jazz Piano Fundamentals book number 1. And if you enjoyed hanging out with me, come subscribe to my YouTube channel. It doesn't cost you a thing. It makes me feel important. Thank you so much to Tony for this opportunity. And I hope to see you all around. Happy jazz learning. Bye-bye.